During this time, a lot of people are going to be getting sick. And if you're like most people, you might be looking on the internet and trying to figure out what are some natural remedies or natural things that you can have that can either help boost your immune system or things that can just help you feel a little bit better so that you don't have to suffer through all the normal symptoms that come with things like a cold or other types of sickness. You know what I'm talking about. Now, all the tips that I'm going to give in this video, a few of them are going to be backed by research, and a lot of them are also going to be anecdotal. And I also want you guys to contribute as much as you can. If you have any type of remedies or things that you have used before in the past that I don't mention in this video, I'd love to hear about it. So just make sure that you guys start up a little chat in the comments below. And let's see if we can find other types of remedies that can work. And so the way that I'm going to break this video up for you guys is just pretty much let's look at 5 things that are really backed by science in terms of immunity boosters that work. And then we're also going to look at 5 anecdotal things that I've used myself before that they don't necessarily have research papers to say, yes, this does that. But I think there's a good body of evidence that exists that says, well, based on the mechanisms of these things, we could potentially extrapolate that it would be helpful for whatever we're talking about. So we're going to look at both of these things, and I think it's going to be great for you guys because you will have a lot of things at your disposal after today's video to start using them and putting these things into place just to make sure that you are being as healthy as you can and that you are doing everything you can to boost your immunity. So one of the first things that I think has a lot of research backing it up is exercise. Now, I know a lot of you guys are probably seeing this one coming, but yeah, if you start exercising now, you probably won't see the benefits today. You probably won't see the benefits next week, but you will start to notice the benefits next month, etc. And exercise, high intensity type training has been shown to boost your overall body's immunity. And so I think this, if you guys are not exercising, that it is probably the easiest thing that you guys can just start implementing that has been shown to help improve your immunity. Now, one thing that you guys do have to be careful with is just make sure that you're not training so hard and so often that you're not recovering, because there is also a lot of evidence that shows that if you guys aren't recovering well, you could technically be lowering your immune system. So training and training intensity does act somewhat like a double-edged sword. So it's just something for you guys to keep in mind. And just always keep this in the back of your head that if you are feeling sore and you're not motivated to train, it could be some signs of overtraining. And I don't really believe that much in overtraining because, it's really just under recovering. And this is kind of how I want you guys to think about this, that if you are going to train, you can train as much as you want, just as long as you're recovering from it. And now the second thing that I think is very beneficial is actually implementing vitamin D. Now, we just talked about vitamin D the other day. The video is right up there. And while I didn't actually cover some of the immunity boosting properties that vitamin D has, there is some research that actually shows that, having your vitamin D levels above 30 nanograms per milliliter, it does show to be highly effective in being, in terms of you being less susceptible to getting sick or being more prone to infectious disease. So I do think that there is some good research there, and just making sure that you guys are, if you can, the other day we were talking about getting some sun exposure. That is hard to do. So maybe supplemental is going to be the best route. And then also just make sure that you are supplementing with a good quality vitamin D3. I think that in and of itself will build up over time to help you guys develop a very strong immune system. And now another thing that is very, very powerful, probably the most powerful when it comes to boosting your immune system. And it's just something that I tell clients all the time and something that I try to practice as much as possible. It's just get better sleep, okay? And if you guys need help getting better sleep, at the end of this video, we're gonna just go over what you can do. But when it comes to sleep, sleep is going to be the main thing that is improving your immune system. There's research that shows that people who are chronically underslept, right? So people who are getting less than 5 hours of sleep on average per week, that those people are going to be more susceptible to infectious disease, more susceptible and more prone to be catching viruses. So if you guys can get better sleep in terms of also getting better quality sleep, then you guys will be boosting up your immune system and making sure that, whatever is going to come your way, you guys are going to have that immune system to fight it. Now, another thing that is really interesting is vitamin C. Now, there's been a lot of debate on vitamin C for a while now. And I think one of the things that you guys should know about vitamin C in terms of why it could potentially be so effective is there's these things known as phagocytes. And phagocytes are pretty much your body's like garbage system, right? It's like the things that kind of clear out all the junk and all the invaders that can potentially be invading the system. And they are prone to like, the more acid or acidic your body is, the more that phagocyte production starts to increase, which is pretty interesting. And that's why we believe that vitamin C can be very beneficial, because most people are supplementing with vitamin C from ascorbic acid. And it's really that acid portion of the vitamin C that has the potential to be increasing phagocyte production. And that is really potentially where the research and the evidence lies in terms of why it could be effective. Now, there is some good evidence and some good research that it could technically just be the acid portion. So you guys don't necessarily need to just be supplementing with synthetic vitamin C. You could actually just be focusing on getting your vitamin C from whole foods instead, and prioritizing things like apple cider vinegar, which is a great source of acid. The other thing that you guys can be prioritizing is just your citrusy fruits, right? So things like oranges, having lemons and limes in your water, things like that. It's a more natural route to get your vitamin C. I think the body's going to absorb it a lot better than the synthetic form. And also because those things are acidic, you are going to be seeing that production of phagocytes increase, which will just help your body to get rid of those potential invaders. Now, another thing that you guys can do, which I think is probably one of the most important things, is try to reduce your overall levels of stress. Now, once again, this is not going to be something where if you guys start implementing this, you will see the benefits tomorrow. Technically you will, because you won't be as stressed. But in terms of from an immunity boosting properties and things like that, it will take your body weeks and months to start building up the immune system. And so you will thank yourself months from now. And if you guys can keep these habits up, I think you will thank yourself for getting started on these better trends and better lifestyle changes that you're implementing. But anything that you can do to reduce stress is going to help the body have a better immune system. Having high levels of cortisol production and making sure that you're doing things to try to decrease cortisol production as much as possible, it's just going to benefit your body overall. So one of the things that you guys do need to know about stress is that when you do go through chronic periods of stress, your body's initial response is to lower its immune system. And obviously, if you're doing anything that is lowering your immune system, then you're just going to be more prone to infectious disease. So as we talked about in terms of these tips that can really help you to boost your immune system, another great way to boost your immune system is just to make sure that you're not doing things that lower your immune system. I mean, how smart is that? And so I think those are like 5 really good things that you guys can start implementing that does seem to have a lot of research backing them up. But now I'm going to give you guys 5 anecdotal things. And once again, there's still research technically on these things in the way that we understand the mechanisms behind them. And so what I mean by that is, like, let's say, for example, you are having a sore throat. Well, that sore throat is more than likely your body fighting bacteria. It's fighting the virus. It's fighting that infection. And so your body has different responses to invaders. And one of those is through increasing levels of inflammation. And so this is what we're going to be talking about in terms of the anecdotal things, is we're going to be looking at the mechanisms behind what occurs when your body is potentially fighting off those invaders. And then when we look at these different systems in terms of what your body goes through, the way that I prescribe the anecdotal stuff is thinking, okay, well, what is only going to further assist your body's natural response, right? So once again, there's no real technical research papers investigating these specific things, but I think the mechanisms behind them, they work. And so it just makes sense. So one of the things to know is that your white blood cells are primarily responsible for fighting off invaders. And when your body goes through, like when you get sick, your body is pretty much going to figure out, is the outside thing coming in, is it an invader? Is it harmful to the body? Or do we need to bring it in and accept it, right? And so your body's going to go through this process, and your body has a lot of systems in terms of identifying potential invaders. And so let's say, for example, you get sick and the first place that you start to feel it is in your throat, right? And so you're getting a little bit of a scratchy throat. Well, that might be bacteria that is sitting in the lining of your throat. And your body has a very powerful protective agent, which is your mucus lining. And that is going to be something that is lining your stomach pathway and also lining the area in your nose area and your throat. And while this might increase the production of mucus, it is actually your body's defense mechanism. So while it is annoying to you to have like all this great mucus production, it's actually your body's response to potential invaders and to clearing them out. So if you guys are doing things to decrease your mucus production, while it may provide temporary relief, it may actually be prolonging total sickness. So I think one of the things that you guys can take away from this is that you can actually try to solve the issue before it gets to the point where your body has to produce more mucus. And so one of the ways that you guys can do that is very simple. I'm sure you guys have heard about this before, but let's say, for example, you start to feel something in your throat. It's getting a little scratchy. Okay, and so the way that you guys are going to do this is pretty simple. You're just going to take some warm water, take about 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda, and then take 1/8 of a teaspoon of just sea salt, and you guys are going to gargle with it. Now, I'm sure this is like something that your mom probably gave you before, but you'd be surprised that it actually helps, and it's actually a treatment method that is used for patients with like throat cancer and stuff like that. And while that's not the reason that we are using it, it has been shown to fight off bacteria and kill it off, and just make sure that it's also breaking up any excess mucus that may be sitting in that area. So I think that's a great way that you guys can, or a great thing, I should say, that you guys can implement that's very simple, very inexpensive, and it does have a lot of long-lasting results instead of having to go through something and taking something like Mucinex, for example, where you are just completely destroying your body's natural mucus production for a specific period of time. Another thing that you guys can use, which I have found very helpful, is actually trying to increase the consumption of hot drinks. Right. So I'm sure this is something you guys just do naturally, right? One of the things that we think of is you start getting sick, you're not feeling well. And so what do you do? Well, you might make yourself some tea. And there's actually some research that shows that consuming hot beverages when you are feeling sick can actually help. And I think it has to do with the same thing, is that those hot beverages are just further decreasing total levels of mucus buildup because it's breaking it up. And the other thing that it's also doing is it's also fighting off potential bacteria by just killing it because of the heat. And then to take this even a step further, one of the things that I really like to have in terms of what tea you guys should probably be going for is you can be going for like a turmeric type tea, right? So make sure that you guys are getting a tea that is more focused on fighting off inflammation. And then you can also be making sure that you guys are adding honey to it and things like that. Another type of tea that you guys can implement is like a peppermint tea. And these things are really going to help just, like open up the airways, open up the sinuses so that you guys can breathe better. And also turmeric and peppermint have been shown to be highly anti-inflammatory, which are other things. And then the honey that you add to it is just going to help to soothe the lining of the throat, because if you are coughing or you guys are getting a sore throat, for example, you might be increasing total levels of inflammation in that area because of how many times you guys are coughing, etc. Another thing that seems to work really well, let's go away from the throat now and let's move up more to the sinuses. So let's say you guys are feeling a lot of buildup in this area and you're just, you're getting that pressure built up in the head. One of the things that you guys can try to implement is adding steam in. Okay, so one thing that I really like to do that works really well, doesn't take that much time, and I think if you guys can implement it on a daily basis, once you start to feel the first symptoms of feeling sick, that you guys you might actually be able to stop it before it has enough time to occur. So what you would do is you're just going to take a pot of distilled water, make sure that you boil it up. How much water you use, it really doesn't matter. Just make sure that by the time it's boiling and the steam is coming out, you haven't disintegrated all the water pretty much. So then once you have that steam built up, you're just going to go ahead and take a towel and, put your head over it so that you can take up all that steam and just breathe it all in and through the nose. And if you guys want to make this even more effective, I think that the other thing that you can do is you can add just a couple drops of peppermint, for example, like an essential oil, and you can also add eucalyptus. Things like that will just help to clear up the sinuses a lot more so that you're not getting that pressure and that buildup. I think one of the things when it comes to fighting off infection and fighting off the feelings of being sick is a lot of it also has to do with your mind. So if you guys are feeling unwell and you are continually saying in your head that I feel unwell, I think I'm getting sick, you are only further promoting the feelings of being sick. Whereas if you guys are doing the necessary steps to prevent sickness and to improve your immunity, and you're also just going on with your day and you're thinking, you know what, I feel well. I think that will also kind of trick your mind to be a little bit stronger. Once again, that's why I say it's anecdotal. I know it's worked for me quite a bit. Last couple of years just have not been sick besides once in a few years. And I think these things really help. But then when I find, once again, that's why we're saying it's anecdotal, right? There's no real evidence behind this. But one of the things that I have found is that if I look at just people in my own family or people that I know who they get sick all the time, not even looking at their health, for an example, once they get sick, I notice what they do versus like what I do, for example, is they're just like, oh yeah, I'm so sick. I'm so sick. And that's all they say to people, right? They just keep telling people how sick they are and how bad they feel. And I just think that alone, that negative self-talk and stuff, even though you are accepting reality, for example, I think that's just making things a little bit worse. And I don't know, what do you guys think about that? Do you think that the way that you feel internally and your thoughts and stuff like that, do you think it has an influence on this stuff? Let me know in the comments. And now another thing that you guys can do, this is not really something that, it's once again, it's not like something like if you start doing it, you might not see the effects immediately, but you will feel better in a sense. And that is just make sure that you guys are avoiding sugar. Okay. Make sure that you are avoiding artificial sweeteners. Make sure that you guys are avoiding highly processed foods, highly processed fats, trans fats, any of the food items or things that are processed, toxic to the body, or highly inflammatory. As long as you guys are making sure that you are having whole foods, you guys are prioritizing more vegetables in your diets, more fruits in your diet, more lean quality sources of animal protein, etc. As long as your diet and your overall nutrition is looking pretty good, that in and of itself is going to be making sure you are a much healthier person. And that is also just going to boost your immune system. And while I did say this is anecdotal, there is a lot of evidence behind this that just shows that people who are focused on eating more whole foods versus people who just focus on eating processed foods and people who have better body composition than people who don't have good body composition, that those things alone seem to be highly effective in terms of fighting off infection and just reducing your overall rate of being prone to sickness. Now, another thing that you guys can do just to help improve your body's overall immune system. Honestly, I don't even know what tip we're on anymore. So hopefully this is tip number 5. Maybe we're way over. But something that you guys can do is just try to improve your overall gut microbiome. And something that you guys might not be so aware of is that your body has a lot of beneficial bacteria on the skin, inside the skin, on the fatty cells, in the gut. It's kind of crazy, but your whole body is just like covered with bacteria. As gross as that sound, we're more bacteria than pretty much anything else. So it's weird, but you guys would be surprised how good bacteria fights off bad bacteria in a sense. So when there might be bad bacteria, let's say you guys are touching things and then you're biting your fingernails and putting all that bacteria in your mouth, having enough beneficial good bacteria in your body can help prevent any type of like mistakes that you guys make, right? Like, so we all make mistakes, right? Let's say you touch something, you forgot to wash your hands, then you bite your fingernails like an hour later. Well, if you were focusing on building up, obviously practice good hygiene and stuff like that will prevent that. But let's say, for example, we all make those mistakes. But if you already had good bacteria and a good gut microbiome in the first place, even if you did make those mistakes, you would still have built up enough good bacteria to potentially fight off any of those potential mistakes or things like that. And so one of the ways that you guys can be focusing on improving your gut microbiome, there's really 3 things that you guys can implement that have been shown to really be effective. And once again, I know I said this is anecdotal, but there is more and more research popping up on the gut microbiome and the importance of proper gut health. And so one of the things that you can do, which is very simple, is you can take a probiotic, right? Probiotics, they are hit or miss. I will be doing more videos on probiotics because there is a lot of junk out there, and there's a lot of debate on whether or not probiotics are effective or not. So just make sure that you guys are subscribed when that video comes out. You will be notified because you don't want to miss that one. The other thing that you guys can do is add more fermented foods to the diet. I think whether or not, let's say, for example, you're not so sure about probiotics or going down that route, I think just adding in fermented foods is a great place that you guys can start. And it's just going to help you to start building up that beneficial gut bacteria. And some of the 3 things that I really enjoy from fermented food perspective, you can add in things like sauerkraut. You can add in things like kimchi. You can have pickles or anything like that that's been fermented for a while. Greek yogurt's good. Kefir or kefir, however you guys want to pronounce it. That's also very good if you guys can handle dairy. So another thing that you guys can implement is bone broth. And bone broth has been shown to be very effective in terms of just improving the gut lining and making sure that no pathogens or invaders are spilling through the gut lining and then seeping into the stomach and the gut, because those things can then cause gut dysbiosis, which is just pretty much where you have a disproportionate ratio between bad bacteria versus good bacteria. So bone broth has been shown to be very effective in reducing things like leaky gut syndrome and just also improving your overall gut health. So if you guys implement those 3 things, I think that'll be a great place for you to start in terms of how to start improving your gut microbiome. Okay, now I know there was a lot of information in this video, so if you guys like this, just go ahead and leave a like. And like we talked about before, there's quite a bit that you guys can do when it comes to benefiting from more sleep. So if you guys want to know more on terms of how you can get more sleep, just go ahead and watch, I believe it's this video right here. Okay, that video is going to help you with, I know it's, titled in terms of how to reduce your insomnia, but if you guys watch that video, I implement I give you guys some really good tips in terms of what you can do to just start improving your sleep overall, both in terms of sleep quality and sleep quantity. And then if you guys want to know more about the benefits of vitamin D, I know we only talked about how vitamin D can be very beneficial for immunity, but go ahead and watch that video down there. And that video is going to be talking about some of the other benefits that vitamin D can bring you. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time.